Now we're adding the always brilliant and obviously on every podcast / live stream today, Greg Olear. Hey, Greg.
How are you? Thanks for having me, man. Good to see you.
Well, it's good that you can see me because I'm the stupidest technological human alive. I do sometimes think that not only were my ancestors monkeys, but we're still sort of working the whole thing out. I think I may still have a tail. I'm not sure, but I'm going to check. My microphone, I couldn't get that to work, and I forgot to hit the turn on the actual live stream. So everybody was just basically looking at a thumbnail and not hearing me. So that's how my day's going. I spilled coffee on my microphone yesterday, the other one, and broke that. I'm killing it, man. I'm killing it.
I think I heard Mercury is in retrograde because I'm also having a bad day with my microphones and my technology and all of that. So if it makes you feel any better.
Well, no, because you're a terrific human. As I've said before, my goal is to only have people who are very smart and actually are the same people off camera as on here, and you are that. So I wouldn't want you to have a bad day because you're a terrific guy and you deserve a good day. Whatever I did to offend the god, I'm a Yankees fan. I'm a democracy fan. I'm losing everything these days. So whatever I did, and all my technology's breaking. So whatever I did to anger the gods, I feel like I'm Odysseus. Please.
Maybe let's get Juan Soto to host the morning show with Mika. How about that?
Honestly, at 765 million, I didn't want him anymore.
Yeah, no, I think it worked out fine for the Yankees.
I'll say this because it fits into sort of the theme. I know you talked with and thank you WW for being a member for 1 month, and I'll thank the rest of you guys a little bit later. Greg is on a time schedule here, so I want to make sure we get everything in. But I think he taught you about the billionaire class, and I think we should be defining them all by that oligarchy and the business and the billionaire class. And I have to say again, I try to keep my politics and my sports separate. It can never be fully separate because Jesse Owens was Jesse Owens, and none of us will ever forget this. I wasn't alive, but that is iconic, and Muhammad Ali, and there's just so much more to where taking a knee, for the national anthem. I mean, they're intertwined. I try to separate them because I try to just enjoy sports, but I really have to say when a human being for hitting a ball well gets $765 million, and there are people that honestly cannot afford food and prescription drugs, like how many ways do they want to tell us the last month we're in late stage capitalism and an empire about to fall? So that was my thought on him. Is he would have gotten a lot of money anyhow, but 765. In any case, well, we could talk sports another time.
I mean, if he was also good as a fielder, then I could see it. But it's just a one-tool kind of guy.
He is. He runs the bases terribly too. And if he runs the bases terribly at 25 or 26, what's it going to be like at 30, 31? Right?
Well, we're not going to have to worry about it. So
yeah. Oh, are you a Yankees fan too?
I mean, nominal. I can't watch baseball, Cliff, and the reason why it goes into what you're saying. Now, he making 700 whatever million, but the people who are paying him are the ones with the money. That's the rich class, right? So
yes, that's the billionaire class.
That's what we have to keep in mind here is that this is a situation where they make us dislike the people whose work is being exploited.
Yes,
for their own profits. So,
and every one of those guys should
forget the bag.
91. Oh, go ahead.
But to your point, it is. You look at it, you're like, something is very, very twisted in our society where we value this over other things. But I don't want to get on that soapbox because we can always get on that soapbox.
No, we can, and we'll do it in the future when you've got more time. And still, I should have said, Jim, if you can grab Greg's bio in general and throw it up there. Maybe you already did. But novelist, author, writer, brilliant guy, commentator. He's got a Substack that I read it, and I don't read that many, quite honestly, because I get so tired of what I have to read all day to do my job that I don't want to go home and read them. And Greg writes so well. He's such a smart writer. And the way he puts things, it sucks you in. It really is. And you can catch him, as Cynthia Rice just put here, on the 5/8. You should also go to and subscribe to his YouTube channel at the 5/8 because it is a terrific show that he does with Stephanie Koff, aka Lincoln's Bible, on Friday evenings. 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock? I'm trying to remember.
8 o'clock. 8 o'clock. It's
right
in the name.
Right, 5/8.
Yep.
See? That's the kind of day I'm having.
I understand. I'm having the same day. It's
all right. Well, let's have a better day, and
okay.
or I don't know if this will make it a better day, but at least you can explain the. You had a great piece about the 15 things that Joe Biden can do between now and then, and but now and when the orange overlord slithers his way, leaving a pool of slime, kind of in a Jabba the Hutt-esque kind of motion towards the inaugural, and tells us that America has carnage or something, and everybody sits there and smiles and pretends it's okay.
Yeah.
What gets me, and then I want you to explain which ones maybe you think are the most important, but what's killed me about the last decade and a half, I would say, of Republican rule breaking, law breaking, norm breaking, ethics breaking, if you can do that, is the fact that we actually have had loopholes and tools in the Constitution, or just straightforward answers, but due to like tradition or norms that don't exist anymore, or things that accidentally ended up becoming the way we did things. You talk about the Senate Majority Leader, which is maybe something you want to talk about in your piece of that. That position isn't in the Constitution. Filibuster isn't in the Constitution. Debt ceiling isn't in the Constitution. I mean, we let them hold us hostage in so many ways that don't exist, and refuse to take the paths that have been offered by many people to just say, whereas Republicans will take that path every time.
Yeah. And
I kick to you.
They'll do it because the Democrats seem to be afraid that if they do something, well, then the Republicans will do it to us, not acknowledging the fact that the Republicans are going to do it anyway, and in fact have been doing it for the last, 4 decades now, 5 decades. It's a long time. It's a long time. And what we're asking for isn't much. Like we're on the verge of handing over the government to a guy that's going to dismantle it. He has nominated people in these positions who are going to go in and destroy those positions. This is really, really serious. And I don't know how much, in the first go round with this, you could maybe pretend that, well, maybe he'll be okay. Maybe he'll do this. The generals will rein him in or whatever. We can't make that argument now. We've seen, the last time he was there, he killed 600,000 people unnecessarily by mismanaging the pandemic, and on the way out the door, oversaw an insurrection, an attempt to overthrow the government. So what's he going to do now? And in the meantime, he got indicted and convicted.
Right, and that's even skipping all the stuff he had done before he became president. They finally held him accountable for, like rape and assault and other crimes.
So that's the guy that we're dealing with. And Biden's out there pardoning, I'm not allowed to swear, gosh darn turkeys.
I'm sorry. I hate that. I mean, I feel like I need to do a separate thing on that's not on YouTube sometimes, so we can all just curse away, because
why can't we? Since when can't we curse on YouTube? We curse all the time.
They seem to not like me. Maybe like they're part of technology. It's part of the whole thing. I think you have to build up trust. I can curse and we can bleep it a little bit, or even not, in my regular videos I do, but the live streams, they are so sensitive with me. Like, my editor has told me that other folks he edits have not had this problem. And
it's really, see, this speaks to the whole thing, Cliff, because it's like, we have a guy coming into the White House who's a serial sexual assailant, an adjudicated rapist, and like all these things, but we can't drop F-bombs.
I might curse. That's the problem.
It's no, it's just, it boggles the mind. So what we want Biden to do is help us. Like they've been invisible since Election Day. I've not seen Kamala Harris since Election Day. And I was early K-Hive. I'm in on that. Where are you? You're still the vice president of the United States. Tell us what to do. Help us. Now, there's an idea floating around the internet. And the first place I heard it was from Caitlin Bird, who writes for Dame Magazine and has a Patreon. And the idea is that the Senate would get a vote on whether or not to grant Trump amnesty, because he's an insurrectionist. He's been proved to be an insurrectionist, she argues. During the impeachment, they did not make the case that he was innocent. They just said, we're not allowed to do this. In fact,
it's too late. He's no longer president.
Yeah. But they didn't argue that point. So therefore, Congress has already determined that he is. And third section of the 14th Amendment says that the only way that an insurrectionist, a traitor, can hold office is by being granted amnesty by 2/3 vote of the Senate, which is not going to happen. So we want to have that vote. We want not to get that vote, and then we can just ignore him. You know, I think all of this stuff should be ignored. Like, what would Kash Patel do on the first day of FBI if Chris Wray was like, "Yeah, I'm not leaving. You're not allowed to fire me except for cause. I have a 10-year term, so turn around and get your ass out of here." And what is he going to do? He's going to, like the other FBI guys, are going to rally behind Kash Patel? No, they're going to.
I mean, if he ends up even making it there,
you know, but
I'm not sure he will. But if he does,
like,
I think there's a good chance that there's going to be a lot of leaks coming out of there, because it's not just that he's a Trumper; it's that he's really not a very likable guy who seems to piss everybody off around him.
Right, and he's, you know, he invents things. He's not a good person to have that job, I think, by any standard.
Well, he was an insurrectionist, right? I mean,
he said very clearly that he wants to go after people. That's what they want to do. So, you know, we don't want the FBI to turn into a MAGA vengeance machine. I think that's very dangerous. So, you know, but there's other things they can do, and they're just not being creative about it. Like, hand it to Trump. This is one thing you can say about him, and we all hate his guts. He was not afraid to go in there and mess around with stuff. He would be like, is it legal do I have to do this? Is it a law that I have to do it? No, then we're not doing it. And he did that with
temporary
everything.
Appointments, right?
Whatever, any way that he could think to do something that wasn't based on honor or precedent, he just didn't do it. And Biden especially is so wrapped up in this. He's so, God forbid we should, you know, try to, but the thing is, they're going to leave with none of the people in Biden's administration at all were, you know, forced out. There was no scandals. There's no anything like that. It's all good people, right? But it doesn't matter at the end of the day, because they're going to give the keys over to Trump without a fight, without anything. And I don't understand it. He's not allowed to, it says in the freaking Constitution, in the 14th Amendment, that we're not allowed to do it. He's disqualified. And again,
like I hate, you know, having these conversations, because I don't want to demoralize people. I want people to fight. I want people to try their hardest. But, you know, I sometimes need to do this. I need to have these, because I try to make clear to the Democratic Party, you know, I mean, again, I wrote I wrote ads for Biden in 2020, right? Like I was on the team. I haven't worked for him since. So, you know, nobody should think I can make a phone call and get through and say, hey, dude, you should do that thing. All that's what Greg said. It wouldn't happen. I'd get the beep on the other end of the line that I'd been disconnected. But it doesn't. It would have happened even in 2020. Trust me, if I tried to directly call him. But
no.
I don't get it. You know, this is something though. This has been a long time problem. It just happens to be more heightened than ever now because of who we're turning over to, and it's just what, you know, we've gotten some House members who are willing to speak up, who are willing to fight back, who are willing to try some tricks here and there and do some things that we didn't used to do. Like, some of the culture has changed. At least Gavin Newsom is doing some things out in California to try to strengthen California and he at least has some leverage because 5th biggest economy in the world, that kind of thing. But it still doesn't change the fact that why is it that I've spent my life fighting, you know, alongside for whatever this party, and always expecting that when it comes to something that is either is something that hasn't been precedent, even if it's correct, or is suffered because of a stupid precedent we set by mistake in the past, that shouldn't exist. You know, I think of President Obama with, we're going to have the debt ceiling. We're going to go, you know, we're going to let it go over the edge. There is no debt ceiling. There never should have been. It's not something in the Constitution. It's something we started doing during World War I, just out of habit, because we wanted to say, hey, well, we have to pay down our debt. Well, but it's already debt you already have. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, you have to pay it, but there shouldn't even be a vote on it. It should just be automatically done. And they created this process for it. But then President Obama had numerous other ways out of that. Like, people talked about him minting $1 trillion coin and handing it over to them. He could have done that. And like, he just refused. He would rather make concessions on key programs that we need than use what was available. And we've seen the same with the filibuster. And you talk about that in your piece. I mean, What's McConnell used the filibuster in the history of this country? 95% of the times, 98% of the times. It just was never used before because it wasn't supposed to be there. In the Senate's a majority-run body and was created by accident. And it's a stupid vestige of a stupid time that never should have existed. And this man has abused it. And we've never stood up and said the Constitution says you're wrong. The president of the Senate is actually the vice president, and she's saying, in this case, or in the past, he's saying, as in when Joe Biden was there, nope. There is no such thing. Filibuster's gone.
Right. Or even at least make them filibuster. It used to be you had to go up there and talk for it. Could Mitch McConnell talk for 8 hours? I don't think so.
I think he'd fall over. Oh, yeah. Is it too soon? I don't know.
No, it's never too soon with him. He's responsible for so much of this. But yeah, Obama, to your point, didn't fight back. He sort of, I think, had senioritis and thought Hillary was going to win. And the Merrick Garland thing was inexcusable. Even in the moment, it was like February or March, he's nominated. He allowed that to languish for months. He could have come out and said, and I said this at the time, I didn't even have a platform yet, really, that if you don't vote on this in 60 days, I'm going to consider that an approval, and I'm going to order him to the Supreme Court and put the onus on them. Instead, he just let it happen.
But because they're required by the Constitution, right? Right? The advise and consent. And if they choose not to, then I think you're right. And you say, well, I've gotten your advice and
they're not supposed to do that. They're supposed to vote on things. They're not supposed to to kick the can down the road and not vote. That's completely against the spirit of what's written there, and they know it, and it's disgusting.
Of course it is. It hadn't been done before, and so my whole point is like, if that's what they're going to do, then he should have said, all right, my interpretation and my lawyers. I mean, hell, George W. Bush found lawyers to draw up a defense of waterboarding and torture, which is exactly what we accused the Japanese of for doing to us as torture during World War II. So you can find lawyers to draw up justifications for anything, which should scare all of us, by the way, with what's coming into office.
Yeah.
So as far as I'm concerned, a lawyer should have sat there and said, you have 60 days. You have the right to advise and consent. If you choose to not do that with a vote, we will take that as an acceptance.
As a tacit approval. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. That's what he should have done. But the getting back to the present moment, the thing that upsets me the most, I think, about the silence and the kind of like acting as if everything is okay of Biden and Harris and all of the people in the administration, really, and most of Congress, is it makes us all seem like crazy, like we're being gaslit by these people, that everything is just hunky-dory, and either it is hunky-dory and we're all wrong to be worried, or they're just gaslighting us. And why are they gaslighting us? It's so upsetting on so many levels, because, again, you had your rant about Morning Joe, a show that I've never once watched and never will, but they
I'm with you, pal. I've run into it by mistake for a segment, but never watched it from A to B.
They're normalizing, they're trust washing, they're getting everybody used to the idea that this is what's happening. You have somebody on, this Hegseth guy and Kosh and Tulsi. These people are there. I said this on Tony's show too. You might as well have Muppets. Kermit the Frog and Fozzie Bear. It's like, these are not serious picks. And for the media and everybody to sort of be like, oh yeah. Well, no, not well. If everybody in the media just pointed out how ridiculous and how unsafe the picks are, because that's the other thing. Tulsi Gabbard in charge of our national secrets is a big problem. I mean,
and Kash Patel, who will come bust your door down if you say something mean about Trump. How is, again, and that was something I ranted about throughout the election, the failure of mainstream media. And when they, let's call them what they are, corporate media, when they started losing people, unsubscribing from the Washington Post and New York Times, I see people like, oh, that's all we have. And they do some great investigative reporting. You do some great investigative reporting. And you also tell the truth about politics. So do plenty of other people. Let them die, was my response to the New York Times and the Washington Post. They are a failed model that doesn't work in this age, has failed us again and again and again. And something else needs to rise up in its place to give people truthful information, because they are not doing it.
That's the thing that's so complicated, though, Cliff, because it's not, when we say the New York Times, It's not the entire New York Times. There's
I
plenty
know.
of people at the New York Times who do really good reporting. It's the people in charge of the New York Times. It's the people who decide what's going to get on the front page, what isn't on the front page. It's most of the editorial people and what they're writing about and what they choose to push and what they choose not to push. Washington Post, same thing. But we're in a situation now where we're these they're owned by very rich people. But like I made this point before too. I don't think on here, but if you look at the Watergate, right? That's supposed to be the greatest journalism thing that's happened in 100 years, right? In
Yeah.
order for Watergate to happen, you had to have a reporter with a good which Woodward had. You had to have two guys, working on it and given the time by the editor to work on the story. You had to have an editor who, the direct report editor, to believe in the story and to give them the time and the kick in the butt when they needed and all this stuff to shape how it was going. And when they got pushback from Nixon and everybody was like, basically fake news, you had Ben Bradley, who was the executive editor at the time, saying, we stand by our reporting. And you had Kay Graham saying, you're going to do whatever you need to do. Whatever you need to do is good by me.
Right.
So you had to have all of those elements in place in order for Watergate to happen. Any one of those things isn't there, it doesn't happen.
I kind of feel like it's similar to if you saw, if you saw or the story of Spotlight, you need Marty Baer in there. In that case, an outsider who was not tied to the archdiocese, who didn't worry. It wasn't like the part of this sort of company being the Catholic Church, who was like, go and find what you find, and we're going to tell the truth. And that's the way that scandal got out. If they had been scared of every person they offended, and I'm not sure everything that happened in the movie happened in real life, obviously, but I'm sure some of them did. The church would send emissaries, or Boston College or other people, hey, we're in the same alumni class. You don't want to talk about that. You don't want to. They try their best to suppress it. And again, I agree with you about the New York Times, except for the culture is broken. I think there are good people in there you could take out of there. And if somebody like let's say, I don't know, Mark Cuban, were to start a newspaper with a similar name, maybe if given the free rein to act in a manner in which real reporters and real editors act, then maybe we would get that. The problem is that, there were good Germans too. And if you're at a newspaper and people are saying, no, you either feel the pressure about what you're supposed to do, both sides cover up and make Trump normal, and you do it, or you see other people literally tell you to do it. And we've heard of those cases leaking out where people are literally told, do not say that, kind of the equivalent of the Morning Joe apology for David Frum, to go back to my thing earlier. Or you also have the ones, and we all know who they are, who want book deals, who want to get a deal on MSNBC or CNN, and they're willing to say anything or do anything. They're careerists. So I will agree with you. There are good people. I don't want to say every single person. And when I try my best when I do that, because I don't want to be a demagogue. When I talk about the media, when I talk about anything, to find the good folks and point out there always are some good folks mixed in there. But if your choice right now is the Philadelphia Inquirer, which is owned by a private foundation, the only newspaper to call for Donald Trump to get out of the race after that debate against Biden, not Joe Biden, because he's a serial liar in their words. Well, that's a newspaper. I subscribe to them. What if we subscribe to them, donate money to them, and made them what the New York Times is now? Got to get them the resources. They have Will Bunch, who should win a Pulitzer at some point. He's a friend, and he's an amazing columnist and reporter. And there's plenty of other great work. What about ProPublica? The Cleveland Plain Dealer. We had the editor, Chris Quinn, in Cleveland, who said, when they screamed and yelled at him and said, we are not going to treat Joe Biden. And I don't know who owns them, so he may have been taking a courageous stand. He said, he was the editor. He's like, we're not going to treat Joe Biden. This is when Biden was still running, and Donald Trump as equals. One person wouldn't accept the results of the election and tried to overthrow it. The other one didn't do that. So yes, we'll criticize Joe Biden when it's warranted, but we are going to explain there are differences between these people, vast differences. And so I'm not saying, kill it all, let it all, but there's independent media out there doing a great job. I think people would learn a lot more about politics, and I'm not just saying this because you're here, reading what you write than reading what almost any reporter in New York Times writes. And frankly, if there are some great individuals, good, let them go. Maybe your thing, your Substack will get so big, you hire them, or the Philadelphia Inquirer will hire them, but the New York Times as an entity at this point to me is like it's almost like it's too big to fail, and it should fail because it is again, even with all the other great work they're doing, if they are paving the path as they have for a dictator, and as they did that famous Eric Lichtblau case, where obviously he got from what's his name, McGonigal, the guy at the New York FBI office, we see no connection between Trump and Russia. An area of yours, I'd say area you don't know that much about, Greg, the Russia stuff. And right, if that helped, and I'm sure it did,
it absolutely did.
People's fears and elect Trump. Well, I don't care what great writing you're doing about food or even investigative reporting. You've just destroyed our country. You just caused 600,000 more people, as you said, to die. I mean, there is a point we got to pull the plug.
Yeah, no, I know. It's frustrating to me because it's very hard to think about it's just very complicated is all I'm saying. Like, I do a lot of stuff, but I rely on the reporting from the newspapers. Everybody does that's in my position for the most part. I'm not out there pounding the pavement, quoting people, interviewing this and that. So that's all.
But everything we know about Clarence Thomas is ProPublica, right? I mean, not everything. But they were the ones breaking those stories. I mean, maybe more nonprofit media, private foundation-owned media, whatever it may be. I'm simply saying, I'm not saying kill all newspapers.
No, I know. But I feel like I just need to make the distinction because I don't want to be out there being like, I have the truth and I know everything, because I don't. I rely on this stuff.
Greg,
I have to be
everything.
honest about who I rely on. I think that's important. But the media is part of the problem because I don't know going into this thing, who is going to be telling us what's what. It's hard to know. And I do feel like there's a shakeup in things going on with, even certain journalists that I admire. Heidi Przybyla left Politico and starting her own thing. And that's, to me, that's
she was one of the few left at Politico that I had any faith in at all.
Yeah. Right. I mean, but she did very, very good work there. So, but it gets to the point where everything you have to drill down to who the byline is and all this stuff. And it's exhausting. And that's
we're not even talking about zombie publications here. I mean, why has the left not done this? Again, they couldn't cost all that much money. You look at it and you're like, and people still see Newsweek and say, wow, Newsweek, that's an important, because again, when I was growing up, Newsweek was one of the most important periodicals out there. It was like, you got your stuff from, now owned by crazy right-wingers. Politico, which started as both sides slop for the most part anyhow, with a couple of good reporters, as you pointed out. And there was a point, by the way, where even I guess I was a consultant. They had an area where they had consultants write about various issues. I wrote for Politico at one point. So, that doesn't, by the way, make it good. It probably makes it worse. But point being, I'm not saying everything about it was terrible, but it was always a both sides factory to a certain degree. That was about advertising dollars and the rest. And then it gets taken over by some right-wing nutty German who prayed for, and right-wing, when I put right-wing and German together, I always get a little uncomfortable, by the way, who prayed for Donald Trump to win. Most people don't know that. The Hill, another place I wrote some columns for back in the day, at one point was owned, I don't remember who, but it was at least somewhat objective media, taken over by I don't even know who it is, but a right-wing entity. And now anybody they put on there from the left is from the far left, so that they're criticizing whoever the Democratic candidate is as much as the Republican is, right?
Right.
And so it's like, why we can't do any of that, seemingly, I do not understand. But you do it. That's why you do have to look at the byline and everything else, because a lot of these places have tricked people by buying, brands and not even remotely, living up to what those brands were before, and they're doing it that way too.
I mean, ultimately, I think the market maybe will win out here because, historically, newspapers used to be very biased and all of them had a very overt political opinion. I'm talking about the turn of the last century, around the time of the Spanish-American War, which started because William Randolph Hearst wanted a war with Spain, and sent somebody to Havana and was like, you give me the stories, I'll give you the war.
Good old yellow journals. Well, I mean, that's...
So, but coming out of that period, the paper that won the day was the New York Times. And the New York Times won the day because it was objective and it was trying to just report what was happening without bias. And it's ironic that the New York Times now, in the same way it's ironic that the party of Lincoln is now the party of Orange Grove,
Jefferson
Cleveland.
Davis.
Yeah,
And, yeah. I mean,
it boggles the mind, but everything boggles the mind these days.
well, it does. Remember the Maine. Sorry, I had to say that. I mean, it does though. You do sit there also, and again, I'm sure I can't sit here. I, went up to the PhD level in history and was a schmuck and never wrote my dissertation. Actually, I had a son, is what happened, my first of my two sons, and then thought I should probably make some money, and I was being offered that as a consultant, so I didn't write my dissertation. But point is, a lot of that history, especially 20th century American history, the rise of conservatism was what I actually concentrated on. But I looked a lot back at the 1930s, the New Deal right, and and even further back. And if you start looking at things, you will. This has gone viral at least a couple times around, the various Twitter blue sky, threatosphere, whatever you're on, which is the New York Times in the 1920s saying Mr. Hitler seems to have learned his lesson after spending time in prison, seems reformed, to enjoy painting again. And, I mean, yeah, that was what we would call a bad take. It's not the
However,
same. Yeah.
In their defense, and in the defense of, you see Neville Chamberlain's name thrown around too. They didn't have late 30s, early 40s Germany to look back on as a template for this stuff. They were kind of, it was unprecedented what was happening. We don't have that excuse. It's very simple to see what's happening here.
We've seen many people break things. The only thing that's unprecedented, I would say, about this time around is the capabilities for the mass information warfare didn't exist in the same way, and they still found ways to do it. I mean, everybody should just, again, I think, I'm not saying it's exact history, but I think it's worth watching, and it's also an amazing show, The Americans, to kind of even see what they were doing in the 80s and how they were using their diplomatic posts, how they were planting journalists at newspapers. They still found ways back then. For example, what I brought up during, again, well, it's still going on, the conflict, there's many conflicts in the Middle East, I guess now, but what was going on with Israel and Hamas, which is anti-Semitism, which suddenly was popping up everywhere, was a key tenet of what the KGB did in the 60s and 70s, because they wanted to split up the whatever you want to call it, coalition for democracy and freedom. And we ended up siding with Israel, and the Russians sided with Egypt and some of the others. And so one of the ways they could undermine that alliance, the folks of the country where the protocols of the elders of Zion were written, was to push all of this sort of anti-Semitic garbage. And I saw a lot of that stuff happen again among, again, there are people that just did not want innocent people to die in Gaza. I get it. I was one of them. There are people that realize Bibi Netanyahu is a thug and a war criminal. I'm also one of those. So to be very clear, but then there are people who realize there are larger geopolitical forces at work there. And you've now seen them with Assad too, the alliance between Russia, Iran, and Hamas, Hezbollah, who purposely, I still think part of that was a Putin pushed operation, to draw Israel out, because they wanted as much of a distraction in other parts of the world so they could do what they could do in Ukraine. I've pointed out that I worked for a group called Birthright Armenia numerous times, and they're the same thing. The kleptocrat Aliyev goes and meets with Putin in Moscow, and the next day, he gets the okay, and the next day his forces are attacking this Armenian ethnic enclave surrounded by Azerbaijan that was independent and pushing for ethnic cleansing. Like
Nagorno-Karabakh,
Russia was okaying all of this stuff.
Yeah. It's going into Bibi though. Bibi was just a simple grifting criminal the first time he was there. He only became a horrible war criminal when he was allowed back. So
correct.
Yeah.
He's covered all his bases like Trump.
That's my point, is that, the one thing that Trump didn't do when he was around the first time is get us into any crazy wars. And I don't know, maybe he's got that on his bucket list. It's not, there's a lot of people in that camp that, think the rapture's coming and stuff like that. I don't want anybody that believes fervently in the imminent end times to be anywhere near our nuclear arsenal. That's just me.
Right.
Well, luckily,
disqualifying. luckily, when you talk about folks who believe in the rapture and believe that Jews need to all be in Israel for that to happen, luckily we're not sending over an ambassador to Israel, for example, who believes in that. And has been a con man his whole life. Just another earlier version of Donald Trump, Mike Huckabee, who sleazy, fake Baptist preacher who at the time he was the governor of Arkansas. You should look up this article. Literally stole everything not nailed down. Every gift that was given to the governor's mansion, they took with them. Sued a guy to try to make the public beach private that his house was on in Florida. I mean, it's like one thing after another with him. He's my favorite was when the Newsmax used to be more of an email list than what people know it for now. The station it is when people would buy their list and send out buy chunks of the Newsmax list so they could send out their fake product. And in his case, it was Mike Huckabee. It was a biblical cure for cancer. And that will go back to, again, he ran as president after that. And the media treated him like he was a reasonable figure. And there's just nothing, it seems, that can disqualify you from being treated. As long as you fit into the partisan lens, you're a Republican or you're a Democrat, then as long as you fit into that simple rubric, they're going to treat you like you're normal. It does not matter what you have done. Honestly, I feel like.
No, I think only if you're a Republican, actually.
Well, it's a good point.
Howard Dean lost his temper for 15 seconds once.
Good point.
Couldn't
I wrote speeches for him, so they kind of screwed me on that one.
Yeah. I liked him.
We should try this, I think, though. Like if we were to bring back, let's say, the ghost of Pinochet or Franco or, on the Republican side, Quisling, would they be cool with that? Into the bones of Quisling, as long as that was the Republican nominee running, I think they would. I think they would too. I mean, back to your Huckabee point. The only good thing I have to say is that Ambassador to Israel, at least he's not in the United States. He'll be out of the country. I'm all for sending these horrible people away. As far away from me as possible. That's true. Where can we send Newt? I don't think he's put him on any list yet. Can we send him somewhere?
I don't know. Is he still alive? I guess he is. I don't know. These people are getting up.
He's got a reserve of food, from what I can see, and as long as there's a fourth or fifth wife that's still around for a potential betrothal, if that's a word.
Maybe the drones are coming. The drones are coming to get all these people. I don't know. I don't know what's happening.
They're eating the pets, Greg.
They are.
It sounded like that when you said dogs. That. Which, by the way, again, right-wing disinformation. We couldn't get out how good the economy was. If you saw the jobs report the other day, yet again, 227,000 or whatever it was jobs created. They revised the previous report up. This amazing economy we're handing over to this blubbering idiot who took his family money and blew it in casinos. And as I like to point out to people, he blew it in all sorts of ways. But a casino, folks, is a place where you walk in and you literally hand them your money for nothing but a bunch of chips that you're expected and will almost definitively lose. And what they do is they ply you full of drinks. They have no windows and no clocks, so you're disoriented and figure it could be any time and stay there. And they pump oxygen in the room to keep you awake. And literally, that's the advantages they have. That the house does always win, but somehow this jackwad, I think I can say that. Maybe I demonetized myself. Found a way. See, what's good will be good about this in the future, as I talked to you offline about, Greg, is my creative cursing will get better and better because I'm going to have to find the ways to say the things I want to say that will fool the algorithm that it doesn't know these words. So,
there you go.
So he found a way to do that. And so he's going to come in. And again, you don't have to really have deeply studied economics, everybody, but I'm going to give you some basic premises. You have a working force. Let's call them immigrants. They're thrown out of the country because that working force is willing to accept less money because of how they're here. Your labor costs are lower. They're thrown out. Wow, I need to hire new people. And we're in basically a full employment economy. Wow, they can make demands. I'm going to have to pay them twice as much. I wonder who that cost gets passed on to. I think it's probably going to be the CEOs that will lower their own pay to cover that. That's what I'm thinking is the bonus at the end of the year. And then you're like, wait, that's not enough. I've got a great idea. We should go ahead and put tariffs on them. So, because what will happen is when they put the tariffs on our product, remember, I mean, China pays for it, right? I mean, China pays for it. So when you put the tariffs, kind of like Mexico and the wall, when you put the tariffs on their products, gee, when it costs our companies more money to sell those products, they're not going to say pass that on to us too. So now the labor costs are going to be passed on to us, and the tariff costs. Yeah, and you voted because you thought eggs cost too much. I can't wait to see when eggs cost $237 for a dozen. How you're feeling out there,
It's really
mom and dad MAGA.
Yeah, no, it boggles the mind, and I think maybe that's something else though. And I got to go in a minute, but I think that's something else that I think is a hopeful thing is that people voted for him, but not everybody likes him. I think people voted for change, even though they should have known better. I don't think anything that he does is going to be terribly popular, and it's a big country. There's a lot of people in this country. Most of them are not going to like what's going to happen. I think an overwhelming majority are going to like it. So
no, I mean, we have to always remember if they finished the final count. I know it gotten down to 1.5%. I think it was on its way to 1.4%. It may have hit that as a popular vote victory. As I like to point out to people, what I hate is another thing the media never covers and Democrats never message. These things go hand in hand. If you have secretaries of state who are Republicans after the Supreme Court with the Shelby case killed our protections in the Voting Rights Act, if you have secretaries of state that are Republican in Texas, Florida, Georgia, Ohio, 4 of the 12 biggest states in the country, certainly, and 2 of them are like 2 of the 3 biggest states in the country. I want to estimate with the manner in which our Secretary of State said if you didn't vote 2 elections in a row, he didn't trust that you were a voter and was going to purge your vote, that overall there's at least 250,000, and I'm being so conservative in the old sense of the word. My guess is it's closer to 1 million and a half voters who they literally just threw off the rolls, and who knows, 10-20% of them at best Republicans. Let's give them let's give them the high end of it and say 25% of them are Republicans. Okay. And these are the ways that they dilute that vote. So yes, when you win by that little, when some of it's because people don't turn out because of gerrymandering and other factors, when it's because you suppress people's votes, when it's all of these things going on, it's pretty clear that at best you have half the country, and you probably have somewhat less than that by a deep.
And you're going to have a lot less once the eggs cost, what you said they cost, however much they're going to be. So, because everything you said is right. It's just he's going to be. I don't even know, man. I don't even know what to say.
Do you have have you set up an underground railroad passage in case you need to run yet, or no?
I'm not going to say, Cliff. I've been advised by my Sherpa that that I shouldn't say. No, I'm just kidding. No, I haven't. I think everybody has thought about it, But
I will say, I'm not saying what, and I won't ever say, but we've got some secondary plans. And again, it's not if just he's horrible. That's expected. Right. It's if his horribleness is for some reason Stephen Miller is bored, hanging upside down, sleeping late at night, and his eyes somehow open, and somehow accidentally they end up on a YouTube channel where I say something bad, and so even though I'm on the D list, they somehow decide that I'm worthy of going after, and I find out about it. Well, then, yeah, I want to have a plan to at least kids, man. I care, my kids are but I mean, this is, by the way, where I live in Cincinnati. You cross between northern Kentucky and here. This is the home of one of the main parts of the Underground Railroad, where they had caves underneath. My wife went to school at Miami of Ohio, and they have still caves underneath some of the homes there, because that's how folks would, tunnels for the Underground Railroad. It's really kind of fascinating. They have a museum here too, if anybody is ever in the Queen City and feels like seeing something fun. But I'm gonna let Greg go, except for because you already stayed on well longer than you said. 20 minutes. You think you were gonna do that? Seriously, where can everybody find you? Because again, I just need, before you say this, guys, I cannot tell you how much smarter you will get if you read what Greg writes. Literally one of the best, most informed writers I have ever come across. And again, you've seen me on this show. I have a lot of plaudits and things I offer my guests, but I don't just say that about anybody.
I appreciate it, Cliff. Thank you.
It's all true.
I appreciate it. I try to make it. I try to throw in jokes.
But you do, because
I have
again,
jokes to
you're
keep
writing
making.
about important topics about that other people don't know as much about. But you also, I'm sorry, I can't help it. I'm a writer, and the flair of good writing, of like flowing, interesting, funny, like you're a writer in the sense of that, true sense of that word.
Thank you.
It's awesome.
So my Substack it's called Prevail, but it's just gregolear.substack.com or just gregolear.com. I have a podcast, which is called Prevail. And as you said, I'm on the show called The 5-8, which is a YouTube channel that I do with my friend Stephanie Koff every Friday night. And I have books too. If you want to read like my novels, that'd be good. I used to do that once upon a time.
Give us at least a name or two of your novels.
I have one called Father Mucker. That's about a day in the life of a stay-at-home dad. And
you definitely just got me demonetized because they're going to hear that a different. I'm just kidding.
It's fine. And I have one called Totally Killer, and the most recent one is called Empress, which is a 700-page novel about the Byzantine Empire. So
So that one's more serious. Are the other ones like comedic at all? Or
yeah, they're funny. They're funny. They're similar to my style.
Then
my style is my style.
That's all I need to hear, because guess what? I have some gifts to get people still. So
thank you. Thank you.
No, I mean, seriously, and who like reading interesting novels. And actually, my younger son, who is 15, is, decided in some crazy reason to take Latin, which led him to embrace the part of our family. We're part Sicilian. So we went back to Italy and saw, various parts of Sicily, even some of the old family this past summer on my wife's side, not my side. And then he got really into, because after the Romans fell, the Byzantine Empire was really the Roman Empire, and he got into that. So that might be something for him. So
it's a good book, if I do say so myself. So
you should say so.
Okay. Anyway, thank you, Cliff, for having me. It's always a pleasure to talk to you, and keep on keeping on, man. We're gonna have to keep on keeping on. Lord knows.
I think that's the thing. As long as my microphone works tomorrow, I'll be holding, and that's a 50-50 proposition. Finally, I think I got the lighting right, and that's worked out well. But
good.
I'm not a smart man, but I do know what love is, Greg.
All right. Take care.
Seriously, thank you so much, Greg Olear, everybody.